Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and today, the NFL Combine's going on, so we may finally be talking about some rookies, just not today. Although I think that's part of the mix of what I'm going to be bringing to the table, flying solo once again, but I promise, got some guests lined up here in the near future, including a few of the SCU contributors that I've been promising, and one that might just show up again if he survives Las Vegas. That's my friend Brian E. Roach. He's probably smiling out there somewhere as he's listening to this, maybe waiting for his flight back. So, Brian, look forward to having you back next week. We know all too well how we say guys are running in shorts, and it really doesn't matter. Some aren't running, some are just throwing, and wow, everybody's getting excited about quarterbacks. But me, I want to talk offensive line. I kind of want to talk more strategy, as I was mentioning with the Pittsburgh Steelers and their offseason. Free agency is right around the corner, and I see people throw around terms all the time. I see all what I call the clickbait articles all the time. We're not always immune to that here at Steel City Underground. It's like 3 players the Steelers should target. Usually I truly, honestly believe that. Sometimes people are just trying to fit 5 players into a specific article, or they just throw somebody out there to be sensational and, stuff like that. But I see fans and I see some of the media analysts. I see the words like thrown around. Oh, well, you know what? They'll address this in free agency and the draft. And that's just not good enough for me. How are they going to address it in free agency or the draft? How? What steps will they take? Where exactly do the Steelers have to focus their attention when it comes to this football team? And I mentioned quite a bit of this, not to be a broken record from the last episode, but I truly, honestly believe if you've got Stephon Tuitt back, and it's going to be a little bit of a defensive line rant before I get into the offensive line one, but both sides of the trenches were a problem last season. I don't think there's anybody who's going to disagree with that. And going into last offseason is where everybody was thinking, at least with the offensive line and the run game, you had to patch up and fix some things. And it's got me thinking about a whole lot of different maneuvers and stuff that's going to happen. So bear with me because, I can ramble some. Overthecap.com. Let's revisit this for a second. Overthecap.com, of course. They're estimating, I think, a $208 million salary cap, and the Steelers to have an estimated $28.8 million, which could fluctuate depending on some other moves. Maybe they restructure because there's somebody they just gotta have. It's if you have Cold Stone ice cream over in your neck of the woods, like it, love it, gotta have it, right? And I think that's the way the free agency is going to work for the Steelers. Everybody mentioning, Kevin Colbert even mentioning how they have more money than usual. Yeah, they usually don't have anything. They have to scramble because you've got a lot of top flight players over the years that ate up some of the cap, right? Huge deal. We'll go back a decade. Huge deal for Lamar Woodley. You had Troy Polamalu. You had Heath Miller. You obviously have had Ben Roethlisberger, a quarterback, eating up a large percentage. Last year he was over $40 million, about 23, I think, and a half percent cap room. And I just did the article for our Throwback Thursday if you want to go back and look at that. But this time last year, Ben Roethlisberger returning wasn't a given, and he had to take a $5 million pay cut and do all kinds of things. He got his number down to about 15, and now it's spread out over the next couple of years. But just because everybody thinks the Steelers have more money than usual doesn't mean that this money just won't get spent right away. I kind of think they may be in the ballpark to buy, or I shouldn't say buy, but sign one specific, I'm thinking of it as a budget, you know what I mean? Aren't we all these days with inflation and whatnot? But one player, maybe one marquee player, but maybe not somebody that's I still don't think they make the big splash in free agency, and here's why. Obviously, if Tyson Lulu and Stephon Tuitt are back, and you pair them with Cam Hayward and TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, that's formidable. And I got folks that are all on me, and they're like, hey, you got to prepare for the future. And, this is talking about the draft. But if they bring back, I like Montravius Adams. They bring him back. Chris Wormley got a lot of experience, playing time, was more than a fine starter, okay? He could have used some help himself. There just wasn't anybody in the rotation. But you go with that, and they drafted Isaiah Loudermilk, who kind of looks like a mid-round clone of sorts to a young Cam Hayward. We're not that's a very lofty goal, right? We don't want to put him up there and raise those expectations too high, or you'll have a Shamarko Thomas situation trying to fill Troy Polamalu's shoes. But just, they are planning, and they did plan with the offensive line as well, but just going with the defense and where money could be spent with free agency. Their own guys. I've said this before. Terrell Edmonds, Ahkello Witherspoon. Great. You signed both of them back. You're probably going to have a training camp deal at some point with an extension for Minkah Fitzpatrick. You got Cameron Sutton, who will be in a contract year, mind you, on the other side. And you've got most of your secondary. You're going to need a nickel corner. Depends on who they bring back, like an Arthur Millette. You still got Trey Norwood. I think they're fine with that. You don't touch the inside linebackers. And you got your whole starting defense. Now, go back to my previous episode if you want to hear about the inside linebackers. I'm not going to go there today, but I don't think they move on from Joe Schobert or Devin Bush. At most, they get some cap relief by redoing some of Joe Schobert's contract, maybe. I think the major out is next season, maybe without both of those guys. But again, these aren't holes you want to make that then you need to fill when you've got others. And I think the defense right there, you're really looking at the secondary right now. And if you got that all sewn up, or you bring in somebody, let's say you don't bring Witherspoon back, or you don't bring Edmonds back, you got to bring somebody else in to replace them. That's where some of the moolah is going to go. That's it for the defense. I don't really have, unless you're bringing in some situational, rotational kind of players for depth, I don't have a whole lot of needs there, to be completely honest. You got the defensive player of the year in TJ Watt. If Stephon Tuitt returns to his previous form, what was that, 11 or 11 and a half sacks in 2020, he's healthy, I like the chances there. So even draft-wise, with whatever picks the Steelers may end up with, we still got some compensatory formula stuff going out, and they traded some of their picks away, so they don't necessarily have the same draft capital as usual. And everybody, may not agree with my focus and wants to get a quarterback in round one. Where else are you going to go and fix, like, these defensive positions you want to cut or not bring certain guys back, like Edmonds or Schobert or Tuitt? You're creating even more holes that you can't fill. That makes the Steelers a basement dweller in the AFC North. And I don't think they're a basement dweller if they don't make any type of a big splash on the big name quarterbacks or a dumb trade for like a Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm not trading for Jimmy Garoppolo at all. I don't want to spend the money. I've talked about that a whole lot of other times. So where would I put the cash? Okay. I heard this, I saw this, people that have sources, right? Oh, geez. I saw one. Hold on. I got to go back to this one. It was just complete malarkey. Ezekiel Elliott. I need some more coffee. I can't even do this. Do you know where I'm going with this? I think the Steelers could get Ezekiel Elliott for like a 5th round pick that I'm not even sure that they have. That might have been one of the ones they traded away. And Benny Snell. Now you're going to do a player trade also, so you could take on a contract. Let me see. What's Zeke running at right now? I got to look this up because this is pretty bad. Third highest paid contract on the full contract. Let's see what he's making for this year. I'm sure he's still up there. Oh, he's the highest paid running back in the NFL per cap hit. He's got a $3 million higher cap hit than Derrick Henry. And I saw somebody put this out there as like a source, and it's like he's signed through 2026. Why would you need Ezekiel Elliott when you got Najee Harris? Oh, for a third down back. Because I'm an Ohio State guy, and this just left me speechless because I'm like, okay, Zeke can catch the ball some. But that's not like, he's not Alvin Kamara over here, okay? He's not one of these guys. He's not a Christian McCaffrey. It's just absolutely mind-blowing. The dead money that the Dallas Cowboys, they have no cap savings if they were to trade him for 2022. Whoever came up with this, and I'm sure you're going to have most of you are maybe on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, and you're going to see this thing shared. Somebody made the graphic for it, a meme, and you're going to see your friends or whatever put this bull crap out there, the bullshitsu, as we would call it. Oh, my goodness. I'm just done with that. I don't even know. Like, I wouldn't even give up a player, let alone a pick at this point to take on what's he going to make cash this year? Already prorated bonus. So 12 mil and then 10, 10, 15, and 16, 6. It'll be 31 when it's all said and done. this is where the Steelers can. This is why the Steelers could spend their money and focus on offense. And I'm not quite sure they're going to put it all on offensive line. I'm going to go through those names. I'm going to speak as to why the offensive line is where it is too. But I saw the other one was a Juju Smith-Schuster. What was it? Something like 4 or 5 years, between 60, 70 million. Their source, the source. It's like a Facebook page I've never heard of in my life. Actually, I have. They've had dumb takes before. It's only this time of year where they throw this stuff out and see what sticks. I don't know that you're paying Juju upwards of $10 million a year. I mean, when we're talking about some of the contracts that are available, we're talking about wide receivers and what they're making this season. I think the Steelers are going to pay a wide receiver. And now, I'm backing off of they only pay one, like the Highlander type theme. There could only be one. Because you got Najee Harris, who was a first-round pick, so there'll be a fifth-year option down the road with him. And provided he stays healthy through this entire tenure, you got another 3-4 years of Najee Harris. You got another 3 years of Pat Freiermuth. And whatever situation the quarterback might be, provided they don't, sell the farm to get somebody else, at least in the interim, if it's Rudolph or Haskins, as I've been advocating, or they do draft someone, it's that contract is not going to be like a Ben Roethlisberger contract eating up all of your cap room. And that's kind of where I mentioned this a few episodes ago. These higher paid quarterbacks, once they take these contracts, it's like the rest of the team is filled in with like great value brand players for the most part. And the teams aren't Super Bowl bound. And that it's usually, you see Joe Burrow right now, that's what's happened. The Browns being competitive and spending all kind of money in free agency. Lamar Jackson, the same thing with the Ravens. It's the cheap rookie contracts that get you like this 3 to 5 year window, provided the rest of your team isn't completely just garbage like the Jaguars or Jets. And then it might take you even longer to dig out of that hole. If you ever dig out of that hole, they might fire their coach and GMs again and then just start all over another time. But the wide receiver market here, that's why I'm thinking the Steelers could pay too. I thought Deontay Johnson would be the guy. That's the guy that they extend. I think the Steelers like to do some of these deals. It's not that they underpay. It's that they have more ability in how they float that money around and more control because they're not necessarily bidding or outbidding other people. It's a fair contract that works for the team. Not necessarily team friendly. Team friendly is like what Juju did last year in order to fit under the cap and come back for 1 year. I like Juju as a kind of in the mold of a Hines Ward. Smiles, hard-hitting, willing blocker, move the sticks. There's nothing wrong with that. In my opinion, Hines was never really the wide receiver one, was he? I mean, I understand like the highlights in the Super Bowls and everything like that. But you think about having Plaxico Burress on the other side or Santonio Holmes on the other side or Mike Wallace on the other side of him. And those were the guys that were, the big, deep threats, the bigger receiver kind of mold like a Chase Claypool. And I think Juju could still thrive in that kind of role. So I'm not necessarily going to be upset if he's the one who gets the extension. Now, I think with what I just mentioned, unless they still might have some money here to do something with the offensive line. I think they'll have free agents and draft picks invested. I think draft picks are the wiser choice to go with the Steelers because you want somebody who's going to be in that 5 to 10 year starter range. That's going to have longevity. You're not going to look at some of these names that are in their 30s, more short-term fix. Maybe you get a couple years out of them, and then next year you're drafting the next guy up behind them, right? That's all possible. I'm not ruling that out, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of bank spent in that particular area. The trenches it's going to be young. It already is. Dan Moore, Kendrick Green, Kevin Dotson, all these guys stick. Those are young guys on rookie contracts. I already mentioned Freiermuth. I mentioned Harris, Claypool already as well. Johnson for another season. So where's the money being spent? It's not being spent on Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins. I think there's like $8 million total this year between the two. That is when Haskins is officially back on the books. That's the assumption here since he's an exclusive rights free agent, right? So I'm under that assumption. I'll just make that assumption clear. So wide receiver money, 2022. I always hate this. The cap number versus the cash spent, of course. Cap number has that prorated bonus, so it's not always the same exact figure. Like, for example, DeAndre Hopkins. turning 30 this year. 31 is where I think the receivers fall off a cliff, but we know that figure from before. His cap number is $25 million for 20. I'm sorry, did I say 2021? I meant 2022. He's got a base salary of 6.6. He's got a roster bonus and a guaranteed salary that are already on the books here. So he's not, in essence, they would lose money, obviously, if the Cardinals traded him, and they're not looking to do something like that. But Juju, is he in a Hopkins category? No, not necessarily. So we're talking 25 mil cap number, 17 mil cash spent. Amari Cooper, 22. I mentioned him. Kenny Golladay, 21 with the cap hit. Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, Cooper Kupp. I mean, I could go all the way down this list. Jarvis Landry with the cap hit, and Brandon Cooks, both at 16 mil. That's kind of hard to believe, right? And there's some smoke as to whether or not Jarvis Landry will still be with the Cleveland Browns this year. There's no dead money and there's no cap savings to release him this year, and then next year they would save almost $15 million. His base salary is $12.5. I think that's kind of a fair spot for Juju. Cap number, I said I'm still looking at the wrong one. Jeez, 2022. Wake up, more coffee needed. 14.3, I'm sorry. So you look at that, but still, this is going to fluctuate, right? 12.5, 13, 12.5, 14.3. That's kind of maybe the ballpark an agent for Juju Smith-Schuster might be looking for. Is Jarvis Landry a wide receiver 1? I wouldn't say necessarily. Nelson Aguilar got some pretty good bank here as well. He's got almost a $15 million cap hit with the New England Patriots this year. Now, he was not as expensive last season. They split his bonus up between the 2 years, so his base salary is at like $9 million. So you could probably look at something within the double-digit range. Tyler Boyd is right in there. Tyler Lockett, Sterling Shepard, Cortland Sutton just inked a new deal. Even Tim Patrick and Devontae Parker, just sub-10s on the cap hits. But these contracts, they go in and out. 10, 11 mil for Juju. Can they do it with both guys, though? That's the interesting thing. Didn't mean to really talk wide receivers, but you'll see why I'm mentioning all of this, because the 28.8 in cap space, let's just say Witherspoon, Edmonds, the Minka extension, maybe some of that money gets rolled over into subsequent years. So that one I'm not really. And same thing with Deontay Johnson. So the guys you got to have money for right now would be like Edmonds, Witherspoon, Juju. I think that's doable, right? I think so, with what the Steelers got. But then, don't expect them to have a boatload of money to bring in a bunch of big names, particularly along the offensive line. Let's talk about what those big names might be. There's not that many of them, to be honest. And there's always the speculation. Is Kendrick Green going to play center? Is he going to move to guard? What's going to happen here? Well, let's see. Let's go back a little bit, because people like to say that the Steelers didn't plan with the offensive line. That was part of the criticism of my thoughts on the defensive line. You got to work on the defensive line so you don't end up in the same position as the offensive line. Well, if you go back to, let's say, 2020, okay, and I brought up the Week 1 game, New York Giants, the starting lineup for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that was Alejandro Villanueva at left tackle, Matt Filer moving over to left guard, Marquise Pouncey at center, Stefan Wisniewski. Remember him? Right guard. Coming in was going to be the veteran that plays in place, takes over Ramon Foster's spot. And then Zach Banner at right tackle. And behind these guys, you still had a number of different players. Well, here, this was actually, they were missing David DeCastro here. He didn't play in the first game. So Wisniewski actually more of a, I apologize for that, but he was meant to be depth, right? Veteran depth, and could fill in where needed. And, of course, Kevin Dotson, Chukwuekwor for J.C. Hassenauer. These were the guys they had on their bench as far as depth. And, of course, Wisniewski. I should have maybe done week 2. I forgot that DeCastro had played in that game. And you had some inkling of injuries and different things happening here because, of course, Banner gets hurt in this game and Chukwuekwor takes over at right tackle for the season. And by the time you get to December, Steelers' first loss of the year against the Washington football team. You had Villanueva and Filer. Hassenauer's in there because Pouncey was hurt. DeCastro, Okorafor. Wisniewski had already left. He wasn't a fit. It didn't work out. He wasn't going to get the playing time that they were expecting. There wasn't the big stink as there was with the Melvin Ingram thing, right? But these things, it seems like it happens in the Steelers. Again, Mike Tomlin is quoted as saying he doesn't want to take hostages. But still, you had like Kevin Dotson, et cetera, et cetera. And in that final game, that wild card game of the year against the Cleveland Browns, it was Villanueva, Filer, Pouncey, DeCastro, Okorafor. Now, the Steelers struggled against the run. Everybody and their brother knew it. They went and got new offensive line coach, Adrian Clem, who's already gone. As we know, the offensive line didn't get fixed. What the heck happened? Why didn't they plan for this? Well, for starters, I don't think that they thought Marquise Pouncey was going to retire after that wild card game. I mean, and even to this date, Marquise Pouncey is 32 years old right now. You've got centers that are playing, you're going to see him on this list, 35, 36 years old. So he put in his time, and that was it. David DeCastro, I don't think anybody knew. This happened right before training camp, the day when players are reporting. What was it, ankle or whatever is bothering him. He's had like 3 procedures on it. It's not going to be any better. He's been playing hurt the previous year, maybe some of the woes with the offensive line, and he's just lost 2 perennial all-pro elite players at their positions, both at center and at guard. Now, the DeCastro one hurts more than Pouncey because Pouncey went and announced his retirement mid-February. It was around Valentine's Day. Just to put it into perspective of what we're doing right now, free agency's coming and rolling around. The Steelers don't have salary cap space to go and spend on someone else. They're 30-some million over, and they had to redo Ben's contract. They had to restructure Cam Hayward's contract. But Pouncey's one hole you could potentially fill. Okay? Bring back Zach Banner after you get everything worked out. Okay, he was going to be the starting right tackle. Chuks Okorafor, we could move him to left tackle. Can't keep Matt Filer. But Kevin Dotson got some spot duty in the previous year. So we're going to try and work Kevin Dotson into this and potentially draft a center. And everybody kind of thought last year, first round, I was against first round running back. I thought maybe a tackle or something like that on the offensive line. I didn't think necessarily center. I just thought maybe that was too rich for the centers who were available. Rounds 2 and 3, we saw that's where they went. Creed Humphrey, for example, available, but the Steelers went a different direction. They went with Kendrick Green, and the hope was let's move the guard over like we've done. Dermontti Dawson, pulling guard type. Marquise Pouncey pulls a lot. You get somebody like this, get him to snap the ball. He's played some center. Kendrick Green's going to be the guy, and we found him in the 3rd round. That's okay because there are centers all over the NFL that are mid, late round picks, or I don't want to say completely undrafted, but there may be 1 or 2 of them floating around as well. And it just so happens. It's not like the super valued. It's a valued position. We'll put it this way, particularly if you look at the Steelers' history, at the names I just mentioned, and also throw Mike Webster's name into that hat. Obviously, the Steelers value a center. And that's why I'm thinking maybe the Kendrick Green experiment, no matter what kind of cloud cover Kevin Colbert's giving for this, when you see a guy like the kid from Iowa, the Linderbaum, I don't know how you pass on him. It's just a matter of other teams may have the same needs. Do the Ravens do that same thing a few picks earlier? Personally, I think they're going tackle. I don't see how they can't without the injuries that have been there. And, they picked up Alejandro Villanueva last year, and that didn't happen either. So if they go tackle, Steelers go center. I think if they go center, maybe the Steelers go tackle. We don't see them go tackle very often, as Brian has mentioned, in the 1st round. I just feel maybe they feel the value isn't there versus another best player available type situation. So we'll see. Maybe it could be a guard. There could be a DeCastro type that falls into there. And they keep Green at center. So interior of that defensive line, maybe a healthy Dotson with a full camp. I think they might feel Dan Moore as their guy at left tackle. But this wasn't the plan. The plan was Chuks and Banner, Green, right? So, and then Dotson and DeCastro. And DeCastro being the guy that he is. But Banner wasn't healthy. And DeCastro, by the time they get that news, they got some money and they were able to pick up Ingram and trade for Schobert and trade for Witherspoon. So they made some moves that helped the football team ultimately, in most cases, even Ingram early on, okay, as much as I poo-poo on him. So now you end up with the dumpster fire that everybody's upset with. Adrian Clem out of there, so now there's a new offensive line coach. But you fix part of the run game problem because you got Najee Harris. And because Najee Harris he's approaching elite. I think year 2 is going to be off the charts. I just hope they don't beat the brakes off this guy. I worry about the same thing with Jonathan Taylor over with Indianapolis as well. You see it happen. These running backs, they log some mileage. I just mentioned Zeke. The second contracts almost never work. Christian McCaffrey banged up a lot the last couple seasons. It's unfortunate. It's a vicious position to be playing. I wouldn't mind like a 1A, 1B, but that doesn't seem to be the Steelers' style. And they're certainly not going to blow early round draft picks on another running back. I think at this point, running back would still be a luxury, even despite your feelings on a Benny Snell or Anthony McFarland right now. So what else can they do with this offensive line? Why didn't they fix it? Well, they prepared as best they could. Even Gerald Hawkins. You think about it. Well, they traded for they drafted Gerald Hawkins, and they got nothing out of that guy. What a wasted pick. No, they traded him, I believe, to Tampa, and got like a late round pick out of that deal. They didn't lose anything. Nothing whatsoever. And when we look back on some of these drafts, we'll be talking about some of that. Chooks was a mid-round guy. Dotson was a mid-round guy. Are they great? Are they good? Are they adequate enough, I would think. I would not be surprised to see Chooks Okorafor come back when I look at this list. And that's what we're going to do right now. It's a lot of fun. It's the speculation game. By the way, new offensive line coach Pat Meyer, 20 years of experience, 9 in the NFL. Carolina Panthers, the aforementioned unit of that offense with Christian McCaffrey being a Pro Bowl running back. Carolina was forced to use 14 different offensive line combinations in 21. Maybe the Steelers had more. I would have to go back and look. But that left guard spot, my goodness, that was rough. You had a couple of different accolades here if you want to look up Pat Meyer on the Steelers.com site and what some of the players and teams have done under him. I think it's a pretty cool read. It gives me some hope here. But if you end up paying Juju, like I was saying, some of these other guys, where are you going to end up at? I mean, in the draft, and I'm not saying this is the Steelers going cheap. I hate when people say this. This is just the way. You got to have players. Sometimes you got to find undrafted players that are on these type of contracts that overachieve or play above, not being drafted in the NFL draft. And that really helps everything. Ramon Foster, Alejandro Villanueva, those are 2 examples right there. Even Matt Filer, for that matter. Plug and play in different spots, see what you get. Late round picks like a Vince Williams, that's very steady for a long time. And guys that aren't eating up, I like to see everybody get paid and make what they're worth. But you can only spend so much. When you can only spend so much, you hope to get a little more out of different areas than maybe what you're paying. If you're sitting in the ownership and the general manager in the front office chair, if you see what I mean. If you play Madden without changing all the settings so you can spend whatever you want, you know what I mean? How are you going to build your team? Tackle. I don't know. Dan Moore, let's say Chooks Okorafor, gone. Who are you replacing him with? You got to go for a free agent. Are you going for broke with 27-year-old Cam Robinson? $13.7 million was his current average per year, and that's all I'm going to go with here. I'm not going to dig into huge numbers. It's kind of hard to even listen to numbers versus seeing them here like I am. Teron Armstead of the Saints is a void year. He's 31 years old. Was making $13 million. The Saints are in the worst salary cap situation in the entire NFL, and I don't know how they climb out of it. That's a guy that might be available. Left tackle. Do you want or need a left tackle? I think they want or need a right tackle. Do you bring in somebody in free agency, or do you stick with Zach Banner's $5 million extra he's going to cost you? That's all you're going to save cutting Zach Banner. I mentioned this on the last show. Is he starter material, or do you put yourself in a bad position, or do you roll with Zach Banner and a draft pick? And then you got another young man stepping into that role. I don't know. Or do you upgrade, potentially, over Dan Moore, who got his experience last year? I had problems. There were definitely some issues there, as there were with Green. It's tough being a rookie in the NFL, a mid-round rookie, and in the position that they were in. I think with an extra year of experience, let's see what the Young Bucks got here. Maybe they improve. Maybe it's just as bad as last year, and then you're like, man, that's a mistake. I think a lot of the free agents, as you're looking through this list, you're going to find like a Joe Haig, for example, like the bargain types, because Dwayne Brown, left tackle, 37 years old, from the Seahawks. I think his NFL career may be over. Trent Brown from the Patriots, 29 years old, right tackle, $9 million per year. It might not be the sexiest signing, but this might be where it goes. Like I was saying, there might be like a Mike Mitchell type or a James Ferrier type or a Ryan Clark type signing that isn't like, it's not going to make the ticker on the bottom of maybe the ticker shows everything, but ESPN and NFL Network, but it's not the headline showstopper marquee signing. But you may end up with somebody, and especially on either line, nobody's going to think a whole lot of it, but they need to do something there. Like Riley Reiff last year with the Bengals. Left tackle, 34 years old, $7.5 million. Eric Fisher, his contract's coming up from the Colts, 31 years old. So you see what I mean? Like several of these guys are already, they could be over the hill. Maybe they still got some prime years left in them. They could be better than what you already have, or at least they'll be stable. Like that was the idea with Stefan Wisniewski. You have a little bit of stability there, so then when you have a younger player come in and play, maybe the younger player doesn't have to play, or maybe the younger player doesn't do well. Dan Moore last season, you don't have anybody that can come off the bench and take his spot necessarily that's going to provide you with better. And I think there's forcing a lot of the consistency there as well, because how much more are you going to change? When the left guard's always changing or the center's changing, somebody's always hurt or banged up or otherwise. Let's see who else is on this. You got some right tackles. Jermaine Ifedi, 28 years old from the Bears. Brandon Shell, 30 years old from the Seahawks. Some of these players will get snagged back by their original teams. We haven't really got. This is why it's dangerous talking about this. Here's an old name you might remember, Chris Hubbard, who was playing left tackle with the Cleveland Browns. That didn't work out. He signed a hell of a contract there, if you recall. Could he be back? Do we want him back? I don't know. He was good in spot duty. That's how he got the contract. And he was playing right tackle. Morgan Moses was a name that popped up a lot. He ended up going over to the Jets last season. 31 years of age at $3.6 million. Nate Solder, a left tackle, was with the Giants last year. You'll remember that name for many years. With the Patriots, 34 years old. Mike Remmers is 33 years old. Bobby Massey is 33 years old. You start getting into now, like, there's some names. Jason Peters, who was hanging around at age 40 with Chicago last year. And there's some you may remember from the drafts or bouncing around all over the place. Some of the guys in their 20s, like a Brandon Parker, a right tackle from the Raiders. Garon Christian from the Texans, 26 years old. Jason Springs, Bobby Hart. Some of these guys aren't even starters necessarily either. I mean, Orlando Brown is on this list with the Chiefs, left tackle. I don't expect Orlando Brown to go anywhere. Of course, Chuks Okorafor is on this list as well, as I had mentioned. So there's a lot of players, most of the players in their 20s, looking for a second contract. David Quesenberry from the Titans, a right tackle. Now he's restricted, so there are some exclusive rights players as well that are mixed in with some of this. I don't know what you do with tackle. Maybe you bring your own back. Maybe for depth you got to draft someone, hang on to Zach Banner and Joe Haig, and that's your room. And I know it's not maybe the most exciting thing, but it might be more exciting. I just don't see the Steelers going into this, let's say, with the unknowns. Like, last season, center was completely unknown until the draft. And I don't know that they're going to do that same thing all along the offensive line. I tend to always go back to when they've added wide receivers like a Jericho Cotchery or a Lance Moore or a Justin Hunter, Darius Hayward-Bay. There's always like a veteran and then somebody else gets drafted. And of course, the draft picks for the most part at that position had always been stellar. So you don't, especially like Lance Moore, he got PO'd. It's like, sorry about your luck, bud. Let's see what we got. I don't know with the tackle. The guard situation with the Steelers could be interesting just because we don't know if it's going to be a new center coming in and kicking Green over. Kevin Dotson, with a full season here, might be in a better position than he was last year, especially when he was hurt to start the season as well. Oh, let's see. I'm trying to see who else the Steelers got on tap here on the bench. Yeah, Joe Haig listed a couple times. Oh, yeah, like Malcolm Pridgeon. Chaz Green, who was brought back. That doesn't excite me a whole lot. More special teams or somebody gets hurt. Don't know. Obviously, Trey Turner, you don't know. John LeGlue showed enough, I think, to be in the mix as one of the reserve guards. Can he be a starter? Can he be an undrafted starter? Looked a little better than some other guys. Maybe you move Dotson over to the right, LeGlue to the left, stick with Kendrick Green. That's a very scary thought. You're thinking about, okay, now, Joe, you're rolling with Mason Rudolph or Dwayne Haskins. Now, Rudolph is not giving him the best line, and I don't know with the short amount of time that Ben Roethlisberger had that Rudolph is capable of making the same decisions. I can tell you right now, Dwayne Haskins, unless he's matured some in that area, and decision-making, definitely not, and takes far more sacks. I mean, we saw Rudolph get away with it in one game, but it's a very small sample size, right? It kind of bugs me. So we may see someone added along the interior here. I'm looking at the guards. Let's go with... I got to get rid of the restricted guys. It just doesn't make it even fair to bring up some of their names. Brandon Scherf, the highest paid here per year on average at $18 million with the now Commanders as a right guard, 31 years old. You get him for the right price. I might be sniffing around for that because, again, I'm not sold on bringing Trey Turner back. And I think at this point in time, now, Scherf might be shooting a little high here. I don't think they would ever touch somebody like, let's say, like a Richie Incognito, who's 39 years old also. Austin Corbett, who was with the Rams or someone like that. Yeah, maybe you could get something going there. But the top names, Andrew Norwell, Laken Tomlinson, a left guard also. So I'm talking about whether you shift around and replan some stuff. So if you move Dotson to the right, you would presumably move Green over to the left if he wasn't the center. Can you? What happens in this situation that you sign? And I don't think Laken Tomlinson, age 30, he might stick with the 49ers, $5.5 per year. I know his contract was I thought his contract was a little more richer than that, but perhaps not. Let's see. Actually, the most he made was actually last season. The 49ers might like him enough to continue on with him. 30 years old. That's what you're talking about. I'd much rather have a bridge offensive lineman, like one or two of them, than a bridge quarterback. Bridge wide receiver, bridge almost anywhere else. But please don't bridge the quarterback. I mean, it's a possibility. But you sign a guy like this, and then you decide to draft, let's say, the kid from Iowa. That's going to be your first-round pick center. He's going to start. You don't take a player in that position to have them sit the bench. So now you've signed Tomlinson. Are you just going to say that Green is a failure or Dotson's a failure? Because these guys are going to now have to fight for the spots. I shrugged my shoulders. And this is what these conversations are right now within the Steelers front office when looking at some of this stuff. I mean, that's just going to be some of the tough luck. It's kind of like the Melvin Ingram thing. What if TJ Watt holds out and doesn't do the deal with the Steelers and doesn't start the season last year? You had to have Melvin Ingram there. You have Alex Highsmith. Now that you don't, you're going to PO the one veteran that doesn't have a whole lot of time left on their pro career. On that clock is ticking. Father Time is undefeated. I'm just curious at some of this. Mark Lewinsky, Colts got a lot of linemen, not necessarily all starters, but a lot of guys up due for a new contract. age 30, 5.4. A lot of the guards aren't making a whole ton of money. So you might be able to get away with some of this, all depending. Dan Feeney from the Jets, Laurent Duvernay-Tardif from the Jets as well. Ethan Posick was a guy I liked last year from the Seahawks, age 27, but I don't know. More rotation depth guy maybe. Xavier Suafilo from the Bengals. He's a street free agent at 31 years old. I mentioned some of these already. There's Will Hernandez from the Giants, James Daniels, Kyle Long on here from age 34 playing with the Chiefs. There's just, I don't know. I don't know where you go with that. The guards, you may be better off getting a center and moving some things around. Trey Turner come back? Again, it's okay to have some average linemen, but at some point you got to have one or two true dudes, the elite players, the DeCastro and the Pouncey types. And the Steelers were fortunate to also have Villanueva and Marcus Gilbert for that span of years where they had the consistency on the line. So who's available of the centers? Let me get a swig. Very long rant here. Ryan Jensen. This is an interesting one because Ryan Jensen is now like a Pro Bowl guy. He's making $10.5 million. He's got the highest average per year. But now Tom Brady's gone from the Buccaneers. He's won it. He's got his ring. Is he looking to move on somewhere else, or is he comfortable where he is? Again, the human factor coming into this too is how long have some of these guys played in their current situation? Are they going to uproot, or have they already uprooted their family? In some cases, maybe they haven't. And I'm just going to speculate on this, but let's say Jensen, who wasn't always with the Buccaneers. He was a Ravens guy. And maybe his family's still back in Maryland. Maybe they moved to Tampa. Maybe they don't want to see him go like to Pittsburgh, or maybe they don't want to move. Kids are in school or whatever. These guys got real lives. So you got to consider that with some of the lateral movements and everything else, especially at their age and playing a violent sport and the toll it takes on their body and how much more money do you want to make? Are you being greedy? Do you need the money because you blew it and you weren't responsible with it? Part of your nest egg. You got certain plans to get out at a certain age like Pouncey did. Just a whole number of different scenarios here. Matt Paradise is another one here at 9 with the Panthers. 33 years old. Ben Jones with the Titans, 33 years old. Justin Britt of the Texans, 31 years old. Ted Karras, almost 30, 29 years old from the Patriots. Billy Price, who has not done well in the NFL with the Giants, 28 years old. That pains me as an Ohio State guy. Nick Martin from the Raiders. Now we're getting into some of the players that are, obviously not even starters or spot starters. And I see like there's Josh Andrews is 31, Tyler Larson's 31, Austin Blythe, 30. He didn't really play because they took Creed Humphrey over in Kansas City. BJ Finney's on this list next, so on and so forth. I don't know. Brian Allen from the Rams. There's guys I recognize from previous drafts. Obviously, some looking for their second contract. I guess it's all going to depend. I wish I could give you a tried and true answer, but I don't have the Gray's Sports Almanac from Back to the Future, and also I don't know that book went up to 2022 or not. I think it actually went to 2030. All kidding aside, but there's just some really fun things to speculate on, and I'm actually trying to look up here and see. I think the Rams could be looking to have Brian Allen back on their fold, maybe. I think so. He was a 16-game starter last year. Some of these guys, too, don't always work out at center or the position they're listed at here. I'm taking it for the face value off the list at over the cap.com. Some of them have transitioned or get slid over where needed because of injuries, and we see that kind of stuff happen. Like J.C. Hassenauer, for example, played center but also played guard last year. So take it with a grain of salt. Maybe the Steelers find a way to maneuver someone else here. But I really do think, offensive line-wise, and the way they're spending the money with free agency, there isn't anyone on this list that jumps out at me that says major improvement, maybe status quo And then what are you sacrificing otherwise? Maybe you go somewhere else with your draft plans, but without a whole lot of picks. I don't know. I think the draft will focus on the trenches, particularly the offensive line. And I think maybe 2 wide receivers could end up with the contracts, because by the time Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth, those contracts are up, Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster will be near the end or toward the end of whatever deals they would sign this year. That's doable. And people are going to look at that as just like a luxury thing. Oh, you're not fixing the offensive line. Some people are still going to think the run game stinks, even though like it did, but I think it could be improved. I think it's scheme. I think maybe Ben Roethlisberger's arm, a little part of that. But again, it's terrifying to think about how quick he had to get rid of the ball. And I got to fix the offensive line somehow. I wish I had all the answers. It may be another hodgepodge like last year of not maybe the sexiest names coming out of free agency that get plugged in there and they're going to have to fight for a position. And then we'll hope and see what falls where in the draft and in that shuffle. And by all means, like a mid-round pick, a third or something. We've seen 7th-round picks. I always bring up Kelvin Beachum. It's never a guarantee, right? But there are guys who fall through the cracks. Ramon Foster being one of them. We'll see what ends up happening. And Zach Banner could still be in the mix. You save $5 million. I think you just get another Zach Banner maybe somewhere. But the health is more a concern to me than maybe the performance. Obviously, not really playing football the last 2 years concerns me as well. So I think Zach Banner would be capable if you take those things all aside. I would like to see more. They know. They see him practice. They know what his potential could be. So you got to trust in that sometimes rather than the face value thing. Oh, they could save $5 million and go get Billy Price? I don't know. If Billy Price comes, I don't know what I would say. Like when when I dump on certain players or certain names, these guys are all professionals. In some cases, the situation does not benefit them. But I think quarterback especially, players get ruined. They do. They just, everything, their rhythm, their timing, everything gets completely thrown out the window. Tim Couch, David Carr. Yeah. I mean, these things happen. So we'll see, folks. I'm going to put a bow on this show. Starting to lose my voice a little bit as I get on these rants and raves. We'll talk a little bit about how fast some of these players have been running in the combine. Don't worry, I didn't forget about rookies. I literally, this kind of maybe shakes out some of the order because you may think somebody is stronger or has certain intangibles. I'm hearing offensive line. I forgot who said this. It was somebody that was, I think it's one of the guys that's always on NFL radio. They have him as a guest all the time. He's great, too, and I wish I could remember his name. I'm becoming an old man. I forget too much stuff. It's not the steel trap it used to be up here. But he was talking about it. I want to say his name's Paul. But he said the broad jump is like the most important thing for a lineman, not the bench press. And he said because it shows how quick your lateral movement is. That piqued my interest. You know what I mean? I'm like, man, I would suck at a broad jump. So maybe I wouldn't be there. I'm not going to say my 40 time would be great either. But I think I could beat Rich Eisen. Or at least at one point I could. I could beat Brian. And he's going to hear this. Nobody tell him. Nobody smarten him up in the comments. I want to see if he listens to this show and hears, because he'll take the challenge for the 40 meters or 40 yards, I should say. Not track and field stuff here, but either one of them, Brian. I think I could take you, and if you beat me, so be it. You know, everybody will say I used to always get criticized because I'm 6'5", right? And it was like, hey, you got these long strides, but I always said the smaller guys, they move their feet faster. They got quicker strides. So it makes up for it because to get my big ass moving, it takes a lot of inertia. You know what I mean? So we'll see. Brian, if you're out there, man, love you. Love all the supporters out there. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We truly appreciate it. We like seeing the numbers grow on the platform. We appreciate it. We do. And we'll see what we got planned for you. As always, like, this is the Daily Steelers grind on Steel City Underground. And we call it the Daily Grind because we got to keep grinding out things to talk about. But I try and at least make it relevant, and I try not to be too sensational with some of this. And all you've really gotten from me so far is that I don't like anybody in free agency this year. Very few. But I'm going to look at some other spots. That's not necessarily true. There are some corners and DBs that are out there that I wouldn't mind if they steal. And the Steelers are going to have those positions to either keep their own or fill. So stay tuned for some of that. Go over and head over to the website at steelcityunderground.com. You could always send us a message, shoot us a text, leave some comments if you're viewing the video version here on YouTube. And as always close out the show. I always sincerely mean this same thing, even though I repeat it over and over and over. I would hate to see or learn of anything that happens to some of our wonderful 2%ers that are out there listening to this. So until next time, my name's Joe Kuzma, and I encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.